Hello everybody, it is time for another sample selection. As I've said before, I have a whole ton of Kindle samples on my Kindle right now, and I keep getting more of them and I put them in the Kindle, say I'll read them someday. Well, someday is today, folks. So today our sample is, the big random sample sheet gave me, this book, Sisyphean by Dempou Torishima, a Japanese writer. It is written and illustrated by Dempou Torishima. From the cover, it looks wild. It's giving me real, I don't know, it's giving me real hell vibes. It's reminding me of those Doré etchings of hell and lost souls and things. So I will get to reading the sample and I will report right back to you. All right, I've read the sample. I've got my notebook now. Because you gotta have a notebook, right? Isn't that the thing? Notebooks, moleskins. Anyway. Whew, this is weird. I feel weirdly sticky having read this. Weirdly sticky. That's the only phrase I can think of to put it. This is science fiction. It begins with what seems almost like an origin story of this massive galactic conglomerate that just sort of coalesced together. It hits you with words or phrases like nimbo-translucent corpospheres right away, first paragraph. And by the way, definitely props to the translator, Daniel Huddleston, for somehow getting nimbo-translucent corpospheres out of whatever the original Japanese was. I have no idea. My Japanese is passable at best. I can go to the doctor and I can get stuff at the supermarket. I would never be able to get nimbo-translucent corpospheres. It starts off a little bit like, again, kind of like telling an origin story of this weird universe that he has created. But you get in there, and this is one of the books where the writer doesn't really give you a whole lot of help. He basically drops us into this world that he's created, and by God, you're going to sink or swim. It is very, very organic. There is our main character who is the worker, who has an unpronounceable name, which I'll try to pronounce with Yovureun. I don't know what that is. He is known as a subordinate, which makes me think that maybe he's a human, but he gets squished out of this big meaty egg sack every morning, which is where he sleeps on this weird metallic foundry or something that he works at. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of if Franz Kafka did like really weird science fiction, because he is the worker. He goes to work, which involves him walking along this hostile metal platform, and he's got to get showered to get all the meat pod goo off him. And he works for the president, who is basically like a giant amoeba in a knitted meat sweater who can't talk. He just howls and makes these noises, and occasionally when the worker screws up, the president just screams and the worker's eardrums pop, and it's awful. And the worker is clearly very talented. He's basically stitching like nerves into little meat pads, but we don't know why. I don't think he knows why. All he knows is this is the thing that he does, and this giant, tall, screaming, translucent thing in a meat sweater keeps yelling at him for not doing it right, but doesn't do anything himself. So if I had to bet, I would say that Torishima, before starting writing, worked at a really awful company, probably one of these black companies that they talk about here in Japan, which is just notorious for abusing their workers. I would bet money he worked for one of those companies, and he's basically like, yeah, that section manager, that bucho that I had to deal with, he's going to be in my book, and he's going to be a giant amoeba in a meat sweater. Anyway, I read the sample. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. Does that mean I don't want to read the book? Of course not. Of course not. I like a little mystery. That's great. A little mystery is great. But like I said, I feel weirdly sticky. It's very, very organic. You get the vibe when you're reading it that like everything is made of muscle and flesh and goo. And there's all sorts of fluids being sluiced off. If you're not comfortable with bodily fluids, this may not be the book for you, I don't think. But, you know, when I read these samples, one of the things I try to do is try to figure out what's going to happen next. And by God, I have no idea what's going to happen next. I have no clue. Now, I've read Japanese lit before. Of course I've read Murakami. Of course I've read Murakami. I'm a middle-aged man living in Japan. You think I haven't read Murakami? Of course I have. And Murakami's weird, but this is weirder. I think a lot of Japanese literature goes in directions that those of us who are accustomed to English literature aren't really ready for, because it takes things differently. It has sort of different rules in a lot of ways. So it's not, of course, incomprehensible. Of course you can understand it. That's the whole point of literature, but you kind of, it's a little hard to predict, I think. So I have no idea where this is going. It looks really weird. Like I said, I feel sticky after I read it. I kind of want to shower. I can't begin to predict what's going to happen. Great. I think I can live with that. I can live with that. Do I want to get this book? Sure. I'd be fine to read this book. I don't know if I would make it all the way through the book, because it feels like a book that is going to require some effort. Because like I said, the writer doesn't really give you a whole lot of support, just drops you in. So it may be one of those books that I try to read once and then I get distracted or lost, or I give up and I try again some other time. It kind of feels like that in a lot of ways, but that doesn't mean it's not worth reading. I think it absolutely is worth reading. I'm interested in the title, though, Sisyphean, right? And I wonder it feels like the worker is Sisyphus, but maybe we are Sisyphus at the same time. I don't know. That's my whole thing about this sample. It's just, I don't know. So yeah, would I recommend this book, or would I get this book, I think is my question for the sample section. Sure, I would get the book. Don't know if I'd finish the book, but I would certainly enjoy trying. If you have read Sisyphean, it's a fairly new-ish book. It was 2018 that it was published, so only in the last 6 years or so. So if you've read Sisyphean and you've got thoughts on it, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe it's not quite as complicated and difficult as I seem to be making it out to be, or as I think the Kindle sample's making it out to be. So that is my sample selection for today. We're chipping away at the big old list, but every time I take a book off the list, I add 3 more. So isn't that always the way? Anyway, thank you for coming with me, and we'll see you next time to see what the next sample off the list is. Have a good one.